Listen, I need you to understand something before I tell you this story. I was there. I saw it happen. And I'm probably the only member of the Collective Council who's willing to admit just how badly we screwed up. My name is Voreth, and I used to be what you'd call a strategic analyst for the Galactic Collective. Notice I said used to be. After what happened with the humans, well, let's just say my career took a rather dramatic nosedive. But honestly, I sleep better now than I did when I was helping make decisions that nearly got us all killed. So here's the thing about the galaxy before humans showed up. It was predictable. Boring, even. Sure, we had our little wars, our trade disputes, our occasional territorial squabbles. But everything followed patterns. Species would fight until the cost exceeded the benefit, then they'd negotiate, sign a treaty, and move on. It was civilized. Logical. Sensible. Then Earth transmitted their first faster-than-light communication, and everything went sideways. I remember the day the signal reached our monitoring station. I was sitting in my office, drinking something that you humans would probably compare to coffee, though it tasted more like burnt vegetables mixed with regret. My assistant, a nervous little creature named Plix, came scrambling in with his eye stalks practically vibrating with excitement. Sir. Sir. We've detected a new signal. It's from the Sol system. I barely looked up from my report. Another probe malfunction? No, sir. It's deliberate. It's a greeting. They're calling themselves humans. Now that got my attention. I set down my disgusting beverage and pulled up the data on my display. And there it was. A species that had only just figured out FTL communication, broadcasting to the entire galaxy like an infant screaming in a library. The message was simple, almost embarrassingly so. Hello. We are humans from planet Earth. We come in peace and hope to join the galactic community. I laughed. I actually laughed. How adorable. How naive. How utterly doomed they were. You see, the galaxy doesn't exactly welcome newcomers with open arms. There's a hierarchy. A process. You start at the bottom, you pay your dues, you prove you're worth the resources you consume. That's how it works. That's how it's always worked. The council met 3 cycles later to discuss the human situation. The chamber was packed with representatives from 47 different species, all chattering and clicking and humming in their various languages. I sat in my usual spot, already bored with the proceedings before they even started. High Chancellor Morvik called the session to order. He was a Kralix, which meant he looked like someone had tried to design an octopus but got distracted halfway through and just added some extra mouths instead. His voice boomed through the translation matrices. We are here to discuss the matter of the humans. Initial scans show they possess basic FTL communication but have not yet achieved FTL travel. Their planet is rich in resources. Standard protocol applies. We claim their system, offer them client status, and integrate them into the collective. All in favor? 46 arms, tentacles, and appendages rose into the air. Only one didn't. Mine. Morvik's eye stalk swiveled toward me. Analyst Voreth. You abstain. Explain. I stood up, feeling every eye in the chamber focus on me. I've been reviewing the human broadcasts. All of them. Not just the greeting. They've been sending out radio signals for over 200 of their years. And High Chancellor, I think we should be careful. Morvik made a gurgling sound that might have been laughter. Careful. Of a species that hasn't even left their own star system. Please, enlighten us. I pulled up a holographic display. They're strange. Their entertainment broadcasts, their historical records, their fiction. It's all filled with stories about not giving up. About fighting against impossible odds. About something they call determination. So they tell stories. All species tell stories. This came from Ambassador Threx, a crystalline being who always sounded like wind chimes having an argument with a glass harmonica. Not like this, I insisted. Look at this. This is from one of their historical databases. They fought a war that lasted 6 years. 6 years. Over territory and ideology. They lost millions. Millions. And they didn't stop until one side was completely defeated. Most species would have negotiated after the first year. Primitives, someone muttered from the back. Maybe, I said. Or maybe something else. Look at this fiction story. It's about a man who gets trapped on an island for years. Does he give up and die? No. He builds shelter, grows food, survives. For years. Alone. For absolutely no logical reason except that he refuses to quit. Fascinating, Morvik said in a tone that clearly meant he found it anything but fascinating. Your point? My point is that we should approach them carefully. Open dialogue. Equal terms. Because if we try to subjugate them and it doesn't work, I'm not sure they'll respond the way we expect. The chamber erupted in what I can only describe as the galactic equivalent of derisive laughter. Various species made their various sounds of mockery. Morvik waited for silence, then spoke. Analyst Vorith, your concern is noted and dismissed. The humans will accept client status or face sanctions. Motion passes. Meeting adjourned. And that was that. Democracy in action, ladies and gentlemen. Or whatever you call it when 47 species collectively decide to poke a bear without checking if it's actually sleeping. 3 months later, we made contact. Official contact. The collective sent Ambassador Threx because apparently we wanted to make the worst possible first impression. Threx was efficient, cold, and had all the warmth of a tax audit conducted in a freezer. I watched the transmission from my office. Threx's ship appeared in Earth's orbit, broadcast the standard message on all frequencies, and waited. The humans responded within hours. A woman named Director Emily Foster spoke for Earth's unified government. She had dark hair, intense eyes, and the kind of smile that didn't quite reach those eyes. Should have been our first warning. Welcome to our system, Foster said. We're honored to make contact with the Galactic Collective. We have so much to learn from you. Your honor is irrelevant, Threx replied. Classic Threx. We are here to inform you of your status. Your system now falls under collective jurisdiction. You will accept client status, provide resource assessments, and comply with integration protocols. Resistance will result in sanctions. The smile vanished from Foster's face. I'm sorry, did you just claim our entire star system? Correct. This is standard procedure for newly contacted species. Your compliance is not optional. I see. Foster leaned back in her chair. And if we refuse? Then we will implement economic sanctions, restrict your development, and if necessary, use force to ensure compliance. This is how the galaxy works. This is how it has always worked. Foster was quiet for a long moment. Too long. When she finally spoke, her voice was calm. Dangerously calm. Ambassador Threx, I need you to understand something. Humanity spent most of its history fighting itself. We've had wars that killed millions. We've survived plagues, famines, natural disasters, and our own stupidity. We've sent people into space knowing they might never come back. We've built civilizations, watched them fall, and built them again. And through all of that, do you know what kept us going? I do not care, Threx said. We're really, really stubborn. Foster smiled again, and this time it was absolutely terrifying. So here's our counter-offer. You leave our system. You treat us as equals. And we'll consider joining your collective as partners, not subjects. How does that sound? Unacceptable. You have 1 Earth week to comply or face consequences. Then I guess we'll see you in a week, Ambassador. Safe travels. The transmission ended. I immediately tried to contact Morvik, tried to warn him that this was going badly, that Foster's response was exactly the kind of thing I'd been worried about. He didn't take my call. Too busy, his assistant said. I'll just bet he was. 7 days later, Threx returned to Earth's orbit with a small enforcement fleet. 12 ships. Nothing major, just enough to make a point. Standard intimidation tactics. They began scanning Earth's military installations, making a show of force. The humans launched every nuclear weapon they had. Not at the ships, mind you. That would have been useless. No, they detonated them in low orbit, creating an electromagnetic pulse that fried every unshielded system on Threx's fleet. Then, while the ships were blind and helpless, Earth's defense stations, hidden on the moon and in the asteroid belt, opened fire with kinetic weapons. Just chunks of metal accelerated to absurd velocities. Primitive but devastatingly effective. Threx's flagship survived. Barely. The rest of the fleet was either destroyed or so badly damaged they had to be towed back to collective space. The humans didn't even lose a single ship. They hadn't sent any ships. They just waited, watched, and struck when the moment was right. I was in the council chamber when Threx made his report. He looked, for lack of a better word, shell-shocked. His usually resonant voice was quiet, almost hesitant. They were waiting for us. They knew we'd come back. They'd prepared. They sacrificed their most powerful weapons just to disable our sensors. They used primitive kinetic weapons with devastating precision. High Chancellor, these humans, they don't fight like any species I've encountered. They fight like they have nothing to lose. Unacceptable. Morvik slammed 3 of his tentacles on his podium. This aggression cannot stand. We will mobilize the fleet. We will show these primitives what happens when you defy the collective. High Chancellor, I said, standing up again. Perhaps we should reconsider. Open negotiations. This doesn't have to escalate. Sit down, Borith. Your warnings were noted before and dismissed. They remain dismissed. We will not be threatened by a species that hasn't even colonized its own moon. Actually, they had colonized their moon. That's where they'd hidden half their defense stations. But I didn't think pointing that out would help my case. The collective mobilized a proper war fleet. 200 ships. Enough firepower to sterilize a planet if necessary. The humans had 1 week to surrender unconditionally or face annihilation. Director Foster's response was broadcast across every frequency in the galaxy. To the Galactic Collective. You've made your position clear. You see us as primitives to be conquered. Resources to be exploited. You think one show of force will make us kneel. You're wrong. Humanity doesn't kneel. We don't surrender. We don't quit. Not when the odds are against us. Especially not when the odds are against us. You want a war? Fine. But understand this. We've been preparing for hostile first contact since we first looked at the stars. We've run the scenarios. We've built the weapons. We've trained for this. And we're not just fighting for ourselves. We're fighting for every species you've subjugated, every civilization you've crushed, every world you've claimed. Come at us. See what happens. We'll be waiting. The transmission ended with footage of Earth's orbital defenses. Thousands of platforms. Weapon systems we hadn't known existed. And in the background, visible through the viewports, millions of humans going about their daily lives. Working, laughing, living. Completely unafraid. I watched Morvik's face, all 6 of his eyes focused on the display. For the first time since I'd known him, he looked uncertain. Send the fleet, he finally said. And that's when everything truly went wrong. The fleet launched 6 days later. 200 ships representing the combined military might of the Galactic Collective. I wasn't on any of them, thank the stars, but I was monitoring every communication, every sensor reading, every transmission. I had this horrible feeling in my gut, this sense that we were about to make a mistake we couldn't take back. Fleet Commander Zalthar was in charge. He was Avrelian, which meant he had 4 arms, a tactical mind that had 12 of campaigns, and absolutely zero imagination. Perfect for fighting conventional wars. Terrible for fighting humans, as it turned out. The fleet arrived at the edge of Earth's solar system and immediately began standard dispersal patterns. Textbook formation. Overwhelming force distributed to cover all possible escape routes. They transmitted the final surrender demand and waited for the inevitable capitulation. The humans responded by ramming a small asteroid into the flagship. Not a weapons platform. Not a missile. An actual asteroid they'd been secretly fitting with engines for the past month. They'd hidden it in the belt, disguised as just another rock, and when the fleet got into position, they fired those engines and sent several million tons of stone and metal directly into Zalthar's command ship at a velocity that made physics weep. The flagship didn't explode. It just stopped existing. One moment it was there, the next it was an expanding cloud of debris and regret. I watched this happen in real time from my office. Plix was standing next to me, his eye stalks drooping in horror. They killed the commander. First strike. They killed the commander. They changed the rules, I said quietly. They're not fighting the war we planned. They're fighting their own war. And oh, what a war it was. The fleet tried to regroup, but the humans didn't give them time. Ships appeared from behind planets, moons, even the sun. Small, fast, barely more than engines with weapons attached. Suicide ships, we thought at first. But the humans weren't on them. They were remotely piloted. Drones, they called them. Expendable, replaceable, and absolutely relentless. The fleet tried to form defensive positions, but the humans had learned something from Earth's history that we'd never encountered. They called it guerrilla warfare. Hit and run. Strike and fade. Never fight fair. Never give the enemy what they expect. Commander Vexus took over after Zalthar's death. She was smarter than Zalthar, more adaptable. She divided the fleet into smaller groups, set up overlapping fields of fire, established supply lines. Everything by the book. Everything correct. The humans ignored the fleet entirely and attacked the supply lines. Turns out, when you commit 200 warships to an offensive, you need a lot of support vessels. Fuel tankers. Ammunition haulers. Food transports. Medical ships. The humans found every single one and destroyed them. Not with fancy weapons. With mines. Old-fashioned, stupid, simple mines scattered throughout the approaches to Earth's system. Mines that didn't even have sophisticated targeting. They just sat there, waiting, and when something big and slow came along, boom. 3 weeks into the campaign, Vexus had to pull back. Not because she'd lost too many warships, though she'd lost plenty. Because her fleet was running out of supplies. The mighty Galactic Collective, defeated by logistics and patience. I presented a report to the council suggesting we open negotiations. Morvik threw it back at me. Literally. I had paper cuts for days. We are not negotiating with terrorists, he shouted. We will rebuild the supply lines. We will reinforce the fleet. We will crush these upstart primitives. High Chancellor, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. They're not primitives. They're survivors. There's a difference. A big difference. They've shown they can hurt us. Maybe it's time to offer them the partnership they asked for. Partnership? Ambassador Kelzer, a reptilian diplomat with a fondness for dramatic gestures, hissed from across the chamber. They've killed thousands of our people. They've destroyed collective property. They've humiliated us in front of every client species in the galaxy. And you want to reward this behavior? I want to stop the bleeding before we run out of blood, I said. Every day this war continues, more species are watching. More client species are wondering if they could do what the humans did. We're not just fighting Earth anymore. We're fighting the idea of Earth. The idea that someone can say no to us. The silence that followed was profound and deeply uncomfortable. Because everyone in that chamber knew I was right. They just didn't want to admit it. We vote, Morvik said. All in favor of continuing the war effort. 43 appendages rose. 3 abstained. 1, mine, voted against. Motion carries. Meeting adjourned. The collective rebuilt the supply lines with heavy escorts. The humans destroyed the escorts with weapons fired from so far away our sensors couldn't detect the launch. They used gravity assists around planets to accelerate projectiles to incredible speeds. Free ammunition, free acceleration, and absolutely no way to defend against it if you didn't see it coming. The fleet pulled back again. Vexus was replaced by Commander Thorax, who had a reputation for ruthlessness. His first action was to demand the Council authorize planetary bombardment. Just destroy Earth from orbit and be done with it. The Council actually considered it. I watched them debate, watched them weigh the costs and benefits, watched them seriously discuss genocide as a policy option. I'd never been more disgusted with my own species or the collective I'd served my entire life. In the end, they voted against it. Not because it was wrong. Because other species were watching, and even the collective couldn't afford to be seen as planet killers. Bad for business. So Thorax tried a blockade instead. Surround the system, prevent any ships from leaving or entering, and starve the humans out. It was a solid strategy. It might have even worked if the humans hadn't already established hidden supply bases in neighboring systems. Remember how I mentioned that humans had been broadcasting radio signals for over 200 years? Turns out they'd also been sending out sleeper ships. Slow, quiet, easily missed vessels filled with frozen colonists and supplies. They'd been launching them for decades, just in case humanity ever needed a backup plan. A dozen colony sites scattered across nearby star systems, all equipped to survive indefinitely, all ready to support Earth if needed. The blockade was useless. The humans had already spread. You can't cage something that's already escaped. 6 months into the war, the collective had lost over 400 ships. Not 200. 400. Because they kept sending reinforcements, and the humans kept destroying them. Earth itself remained untouched. The humans had turned their entire solar system into a fortress, and we couldn't crack it. Then the humans went on the offensive. Small fleets appeared in collective territory. Not to conquer. To disrupt. They'd hit a communication relay, disappear for weeks, then strike a mining operation on the other side of collective space. They didn't fight battles. They fought a campaign of chaos and uncertainty. No one knew where they'd appear next. No one felt safe. Client species started refusing to send support to the war effort. Some even started sending secret messages to Earth, asking about terms for independence. The whole collective was coming apart at the seams, and it had only been 6 months. I submitted my resignation. Morvik refused to accept it. Said I was too valuable to lose. Really meant I knew too much to be allowed to leave. Then Director Foster sent a message to the Council. A personal message. I was there when we received it. She appeared on the display, looking tired. No, not tired. Exhausted. But determined. Always determined. High Chancellor Morvik. Members of the Collective Council. I'm reaching out one last time to offer terms. Not surrender. Terms. You leave our system. You acknowledge human sovereignty over the Sol system and our colony sites. You offer formal recognition as an independent species. In return, we stop our attacks. We open trade. We share technology. We become the partners we offered to be at the start. This is not a position of weakness. This is mercy. We can keep fighting. We're prepared to fight for generations if necessary. But we'd rather not. We'd rather build something. Your move. The transmission ended. The chamber was silent. Everyone waited for Morvik to respond. He sat there, all 6 eyes staring at the blank display, tentacles twitching. Finally, he spoke. Analyst Vorath. In your professional opinion, can we win this war? Everyone turned to look at me. This was the moment I'd been dreading. The moment I had to tell them the truth. No, High Chancellor. We cannot. The humans have proven they can sustain this indefinitely. They have the resources, the determination, and the strategic position. Every day we continue, we lose more ships, more credibility, more control over our client species. The humans aren't trying to conquer us. They're trying to outlast us. And they will. Because that's what they do. They survive. They endure. They don't quit. Morvik's tentacles drooped. For the first time since I'd known him, he looked old. Defeated. Council votes. All in favor of accepting the human terms and ending this war. Every single appendage rose. Including Morvik's. Motion carries. Someone draft a response. That someone was me. I spent 3 hours crafting a message that acknowledged human sovereignty without explicitly admitting defeat. Political double-speak at its finest. Foster saw right through it but accepted anyway. She knew we'd lost. That was enough. The war ended with a treaty signed aboard a human station they'd built specifically for the occasion. I was part of the collective delegation. Got to meet Foster in person. She was shorter than I expected, but she had these eyes that seemed to see right through you. Analyst Vorath, she said, shaking my hand in the human gesture of greeting. I've read your reports. You were the only one warning them about us. I tried. They didn't listen. They never do. She smiled. For what it's worth, I'm glad someone on your side understood. Makes me think peace might actually work. Director Foster, can I ask you something? Were you really prepared to fight for generations? Her smile faded. Analyst Vorath, we've been preparing to fight for survival since we first learned to throw rocks at predators. Fighting the collective? That was just Tuesday for us. We'd have fought for as long as it took. That's not bravery. That's just who we are. We don't know how to quit. The treaty was signed. The collective withdrew from human space. Earth opened trade relations but remained independent. Other client species saw what happened and started demanding renegotiations of their own status. The whole power structure of the galaxy shifted in less than a year. I was promoted, oddly enough. Turns out being the only analyst who correctly predicted the outcome makes you valuable. I now advise the Council on Human Affairs. Make sure we don't accidentally start another war we can't win. And the humans? They join the galactic community as equals. They share technology, they trade freely, they even send cultural ambassadors. But everyone knows. Everyone remembers. That's the species that said no. That's the species that fought the collective to a standstill with primitive weapons and sheer stubbornness. I see Foster occasionally at diplomatic functions. She's always polite, always professional. But sometimes I catch her looking at the various species representatives with this expression. Not hostile. Just evaluating. Measuring. Planning. Like she's already thinking 3 moves ahead in a game nobody else knows they're playing. That's when I remember the most important lesson from the war. The lesson the galaxy learned too late. You can defeat an enemy who fights for conquest. You can negotiate with an enemy who fights for profit. But you can never, ever beat an enemy who fights simply because they refuse to lose. The humans don't quit. Not when they're outnumbered. Not when the odds are impossible. Not when logic says they should surrender. They just keep going, keep adapting, keep fighting. Not because they're the strongest or the smartest or the most advanced. Because they're human. And that, as the galaxy learned the hard way, is more than enough. I'm Vorith, former strategic analyst for the Galactic Collective, current advisor on human affairs. And I'm telling you this story because someone needs to remember. Someone needs to understand. The galaxy learned too late why humans don't quit. Don't make the same mistake we did. If humans offer you partnership, take it. If they offer friendship, treasure it. Because the alternative, the one we chose, is learning firsthand that there's no force in the galaxy more dangerous than a human who's decided they're not backing down. Trust me. I have the scars to prove it.